While we're gathering, I'm going to start the learning sponsors. A year of learning, Isaac and Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Isser, friends of Leonie Meisman and Leah Sabra Bas Chanuk Zundel, friends of Mela Skotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family, in memory of his wife Malka Chana Bas Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah Svi Ben Zeb, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen, those who were inspired by a Rebbetzin Emerita Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bas Meshulam Mishkaha. A month of learning by friends and students of Rabbi Shalom Kornblum, Rav Shalom Ben Mordechai, Susan and Ronald Podolsky, in memory of her father, Simcha Bunam Ben Yeshua, Michael and Judith Poretsky, in memory of his mother, Rachel Bas Avram. Once again, Susan and Ronald Podolsky, in memory of her mother, Chaya Bas Avram Dov. B. Pizer, in memory of her father, Yitzchak Dov Ben Shmuel. Judith and Michael Poretsky, once again, but off different order, in memory of her mother, Razel Bas Yehuda Leib. Stanley Presser, in memory of his wife, Chaya Leah Bas Zev HaKohen. Malki and Rabbi Dr. Yanni Honig, in memory of her aunt, Emma Eitel Bat Shimon. A week of learning by Eliana Goldwasser, in memory of her husband, Eliyahu Ben Mordechai. Yossi and Sippy Pelig, in memory of his mother, Shprinza Bas Akiva. Today being the 16th, right? Yep. We have no individual days of learning today. And the Shamas have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Belt the Yeshua Shamatlia, Machol Ben Israel, Good Gaben Shtiar. Okay. Again, I will ask everyone, I will do the best I can, but ask everyone to please try to keep questions and comments to a minimum. Okay. The Gemara is going to start today, and that's where we're going to begin on Mem Zayin Amud Bey's second line from the top where the Gemara starts. Okay. Who are we missing? Okay. I don't know if Steve is. Okay. It says the Gemara Tanu Rabbanan, says a Braita. Minayin she'im ne'erfaha egla v'yachakach yimsaha horei. How do we know that if they've already decapitated the animal and then they find the murderer, she'ein poteret oto, we do not say that because there was a question, that's why we do egla arufa. But now we found the murderer, therefore there is no question who committed the act. Maybe that's sufficient. We've done kapara, and that's the case. All right, Talmud Lomar. So our text tells us, Ola Aretz lo yichupar ledam asher shafach ba ki'im bedam shafcha. That for the land there is no atonement for the blood that was shed until the blood of the shedder is taken care of. Okay, in other words, to the one who shed the blood. Okay. Ed echad omer ra'iti et tahorek. That one witness says they saw the murder. Tama, what's the reasoning? Demachishle. Why? Because you had one versus one, and one contradicted the other. Ha lo machishle. We infer from this that if there is no contradiction, Eid echad mehaman, that one witness would be satisfactory. Menahani Mili, what's the basis for this? The Tanu Rabbanan, as taught in the Braita, Lo noda mihi kahu, if we don't know who was, says the pasuk, basically it's not known who struck him, ha noda mihi kahu, implying here, well, we know who struck him. Afilu echad, b'sof ha'olam lo hayu orfin. Even if there were one then somewhere throughout the world, who would know, then we would not need to do the Egla Arufa, because it's based on doubt. We don't know. Right? Rabbi Akiva Omer, he says, Minayin l'Sanhedrin, Shera'u echad sheharag et hanefesh. How do we know, says Rabbi Akiva, that even if the members of the Sanhedrin saw the killing, right? Ve'ein makirinoto, but they don't recognize who he is. Shelo hayu orfin, that we would not do a egla arufa. Talmud lomar, it says ve'einenu lo ra'u. Okay, that's part of their declaration based on the pasuk. Okay, that we did not see. V'halo ra'u, but they did see. Hashta da amarta eid echad mehamar. But now, since we say that one witness is viable, idach, the other, chad hechi matze makri shlai. If that's the case, how could you say that with another person challenging that nullifies one testimony? V'ha'amar Ula, but didn't Ula say, Kol makom she'amina Torah, ed echad, any place where the Torah establishes the testimony of a single witness, okay, hare kan shnayim, then it's like two, okay, because we talked about that when it says aid, it really meant edut. It really means testimony and not single witness. Okay, all right. Ve'ein dvarav shel echad b'makom shnayim, and we say that the witness, the statement of one challenging, is not the case of, doesn't go against or disagree with it, that of two. Amar lach Ula, but they said then Ula, Tane, that was taught elsewhere, lo hayu orfin, it claims that then you would not do the egla rufa, you wouldn't decapitate. V'chein amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and likewise says Rabbi Yitzchak, Tane lo hayu orfin, that again he also agreed that they would not do decapitation. The Rabbi Chia Amar, and according to Rabbi Chia, Tani, it was taught, hayu orfin, that they would still do decapitation. The Rabbi Chia kasha, and this was problematic for Rabbi Chia. Why? The Ula lo kasha, but for Ula there was not a problem with this difference of opinion. Okay, why? Kan bevat echad. In one case, you have a situation where the two individuals came at the same time. Kan b'zeh achar zeh. And in another situation, we have that they did not come at the same time, that the first person who came and said they saw, okay, that even though it was one person, that their testimony is accepted as if it were two. Okay, okay. T'nan. Now we learn another new Mishnah rather. Eid echad omer, one witness says, Ra'iti et ha'hareg, that I saw the murderer. Ushnayim omrim lo ra'ita, and two come and challenge and say, no, you did not see. Hayu orfin. Our text said that you do perform the decapitation. Ha chad v'chad. Right. Here it seems to imply that this is like one versus one. Lo hayu orfin, where it said clearly that you don't do it. Okay. Tiyuvta the Rabbi Chia. This would seem to be a proof text against the view of Rabbi Chia. Ula ta'amech ema seifa. And according to your line of reasoning, I would say, look at the end of our Mishnah. There it says, Shnayim omrim ra'im, two say we saw, ve'ed echad omer lo re'ite, and one witness says you did, the two of you did not see. Lo hayu orfin, there we don't decapitate. Huh? Okay, what's the situation? Ha chad v'chad hayu orfin. This seems to say when you have one versus one, that you would be required to do the decapitation. Ella matnitin kula bepsule edut. But rather, our Mishnah must be understood as dealing with individuals who are not normally acceptable witnesses. Okay? Ukeda Rabbi Nehemiah. And according to the view of Rabbi Nehemiah, Da'amar, who said, Kol makom she'amina Torah eid echad, every place where the Torah establishes the phrase one witness, halach achar rov deot, then we follow the majority of views. Va'asu shtei nashim be'ish echad, and then we would make two women equivalent to one man. Okay? Kishnei anashim be'ish echad, like two men against one man. Ve'ika da'amri, and there are those who explain it this way. Kol hecha da'ata eid echad, kasher me'ikara. Anytime there is a valid individual witness who comes first, earlier, afilu me'anashim ki achad damyan. Even then, if you had 100 women, okay, their total testimony would only be equal to a single individual. Okay? And what are we talking about here? Isha me'ikara. For example, a situation where the woman came first. Okay, V'tirtza de Rabbi Nechemia. So explain it according to Rabbi Nechemia in the following manner. Rabbi Nechemia Omer, he says, Kol makom she'amina Torah eid echad, any place where the Torah establishes, okay, the testimony of a single person, halach achar rov deot, we follow the majority of the opinions. Va'asu shtei nashim be'isha achat, and they made two women then equivalent to a single woman. Okay? Kishnei anashim be'ish echad, just like two men against one man. Aval, but shtei nashim be'ish echad, a situation where you have two women, okay, versus bringing testimony versus one man, ki palga dami, that is more like 50-50, half and half, okay, because the two women would then be considered like one man, and it's one man versus one man. Okay, vitarte psule edut lamali. Okay, and two examples of inappropriate witnesses. Why did we have to bring this? Mahu detema. What is it coming to tell you? Ki as linen batar rov deot the chumra, that when we follow the example of the majority of opinions, that is for okay, that would be for astringency. Okay, aval lekula, but perhaps for a leniency, low, that we wouldn't follow that. Kamash malan comes to teach us. That's we kind of saying. The Gemara says, therefore, that doesn't apply. It's not simply for chumrah. It could also be for kula as well. Okay. All right. Now we go into a whole series of statements based on the Mishnah, and then afterwards, where the life situations changed, and therefore the rabbis or other individuals, okay, readapted the law. Okay. Misharabu harotzchim. Once there increased the number of murderers. Tanu Rabbanan says a bright. Misharabu harotzchanim. Once there increased the number of murderers, but la egla arufa, they nullified the practice of decapitation of the animal. The fi she'ena ba'a ela al hasafek. Why? Because it only came as a result. We only did decapitation when there was a doubt.
But what we're talking about here is known murder.
Well, we'll get to that. Okay, so what we see is the fact that since there were many murderers, you normally would know who would commit the act, and therefore there was no longer any doubt. And as a result, therefore, the ceremony was no longer necessary. Okay? Certainly, we assume one of them did it. Exactly. Exactly. That's the point. Misha Rabu Harotzchanim, Begalui. Okay, when the number of murders increased publicly, but La Egla Arufa. It was clear that they nullified the practice of Egla Arufa. Okay. Misharabu hanoafim, when increased the number of adulterers, what happened? Tanu Rabbanan, says our Braita, v'nikah ha'ish me'avon. We know that the Braita says that the man has to also be innocent of any sin.
Not any immorality.
Sin of immorality, all right? Bisman shaha'ish menukah me'avon. At the time when the man is free from any sin or act of immorality, hamayim bodkim et ishto. Then the water is capable of fulfilling the examination purpose for his wife. Ein ha'ish menukeh me'avon. But if the man is not innocent from sexual misconduct, ein hamayim bodkim et ishto. Then the water is not able to examine the wife. Ve'omer, why? And we say, lo efkod al benotechem ki tizneche mcholi. Okay, why? That's citing the pasuk, right? That we say in that case, right? That it's daughters committing immorality, right? So on. Right, so my ve'omer, what does it mean? And I say, v'chitema avon didei. Are you going to say that the sin is his? And yes, dibanev dibanete no, and but any sin of his sons or his daughters no. Tashma, listen to the Braita that says, lo efkod al benotechem. I will not count or determine it against your daughters. Ki tiznena ba'al kalotehem kitin afena. Okay, that's the whole point, right? Because the daughters, etc. And others also commit the sexual impropriety. V'chitema, and if you want to say avon eshet ish en, that the sexual morality of the husband, yes, avon apnuya lo, but that of somebody who is not married, no. Tashma, listen to the following bright. Kihem am hazonot yifredu ba'am hakadeshot yizbachu v'gomer. Again, we have a pasuk that tries to show us that immorality was, in some cases, rampant
and was familial.
Okay, what's the situation? Va'am lo yavin. Okay, yilavet. Okay, so there again, telling us that again it was throughout the people. Amar Rabbi Elazar, he says, Amar lehem navi li Yisrael. Okay, he says that the prophet spoke to them and said, Im atem makpidin al atzmachem. If you are stringent about yourselves, namely in areas of morality, all right, sexuality, mayim bodkim neshotechem, then the water will examine the wives. Ve'im lav, and if not, ein hamayim bodkim neshotechem, then the water will not examine the wives. What happens? Misharabu ba'alei hana'ah. We get to a new statement now. When there increased the number of, this implies scholars seeking pleasure. Okay? Nit of two hadinim, then the laws became twisted. Okay? Or right? So what happened, right? V'nit kalkalu hama'asim. And people's behavior became ruined. Okay? Ve'ein noach ba'olam. And then there is no peace or well-being in the world. Misharabu ro'eh panim badin. Since they're increased among judges the idea of favoritism. Okay? But tail. Okay, what happened then? Okay, lo tagoru. All right, they did away with the fact of they invalidated the pasuk of lo taguru, okay, upsak lo takiru, as well as that part of the pasuk that says, and the judgment one shouldn't recognize. Uparku ol shemayim, okay, and this removed the yoke of heaven. V'natnu alehem ol basar badam. But they took on themselves the yoke of human beings. A new example. Misharabu lo chashay lechishot badin. Once there increased the number of whisperers in court, namely lawyers would whisper to the judges, and and kind of whatever bribes and all sorts of things. Okay, what happened? Rabbah Charon Af Israel. There increased anger in Israel.
God's
right?
anger at Israel.
Yeah. Okay. Right. V'nistalka hashchina, and as a result of that disaffection of the law, okay, from the judges and the lawyers, the Shekhinah departed. Okay? So what goes on? Mishum shene'amah. Why? Because it says, "V'kerev Elohim yishpot," because within God's presence, I'll say, that's how justice should be carried out. Okay? All right. Again, another example. Misherabu acharei betza'am libam. Okay? When there increased the number of people who heart lusted for gain, right? Holech, Rabo, Amru, right? Okay, yeah. Holech, Ravu, Ha'omrim, and therefore we see many were saying, the Ra Tov, the Tov Ra. Good is evil and evil is good. Okay, that's the case. Misharabu Ha'omrim, the Ra Tov, the Tov Ra. Once there increased the number of people who thought evil was good and good was evil, Rabu oi oi ba'olam. Then we heard people, whoa, whoa, in the world. Okay, right. Misha Rabu Moshche Charuk. Okay, once there increased the number of people who would spit long distance. Ravu Hayihirim. Then the number of arrogant people increased. V'nitma'u hatalmidim. Okay, and the number of sages and students of sages, okay, diminished. V'hatorah chozeret alom deha. And the Torah goes around looking for those who would study. Okay? Misharabu Yehirim. Once there increased the number of arrogant people. Hitchilu Banot Yisrael, Lina Seili Yehirim. Then the daughters of Israel began to marry haughty or arrogant people. She'ein Dorenu Ro'eh Ela Lifnim. Because we see that our generation sees that this is what's happening now. Aini, is that really the case?
The girls are looking
Right, right. V'ha'amar ma. Okay, didn't the master say, Hai man de mehar, the mihar, according to the one who is arrogant, afilu inshe beite lo mekabel. Okay, whereas even those who in their own home would not be acceptable. Lo mekabel. Shneamar, as we say, gaver yahir lo yinaveh. Lo yinaveh. Okay, again, the pasuk citing the fact that the proud man has no strong or good habitation. Afilu banu hashalo, even if he built it the house himself. Mi'ikara, originally, kafza aleha leso, mitzil alayhu. Okay, right. Originally, okay, they would, let's say, go quickly to look after such
the girls
men.
would be impressed.
They would see the fancy guy dressed up, haughty, and that's what would draw them to them. Okay, Misharabu Mitilei Malai. Okay, once the I'm going to translate this once, Michael, please. Okay, once there increased the number of judges who would give businessmen their works, their wares to sell for them. In other words, they were more interested in profit than in judgment. Okay, in that situation, al ba'alei batim. Okay, that's the case. Rabba hashochad, then bribery increased. V'hatiyat mishpat, and the perversion of justice, upaskat tova, and goodness ended. Misharavu mikablani tovatcha. Once there increased the situation of judges who said, I'll accept your favorites, your benefits,
Yeah.
okay, your gifts, things like that. Umechazkei tovatecha. It reminded me of the Clarence Thomas issue right now. Okay, all right. I said it reminded me of what's being discussed about Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court judge, that he was, okay, umechazkeni tovatecha, okay, and I will take your the benefits you provide. Ravu, they're increased. Ish hayashar be'einav ya'aseh. Everyone did what they thought was good in their own eyes. Okay. Shvalim hugba'u v'hagvo'im hushpalu. Those who were low were raised up, and those that were high were lowered down. Umalchuta azla v'navla. Okay, and the authority of the land, the kingship, but I like authority better, passed, and people went into exile, right? Misharabu tsare ayin. Once the misers increased, v'torfe teref, okay, and those who were taking whatever they could, spoilers, okay, ravu ma'am sehalev, okay. Then we saw there was an increase also in those who were tight-fisted, so to speak. That's what I mean. Sorry, me'am sehalev, who had their hearts were closed up. V'kovtse yadayim, those who were tight-fisted, milahalvot, and they weren't willing to loan. Va'avru al ma shekatuv b'Torah, and therefore they transgressed what was written in the Torah. Hishomer lecha pen, etc. Misharavu nitiot garon. Once there increased those with again haughtiness, outstretched necks. Umishkarot einayim, and okay, and they had their eyes were a lot of rouge and a lot of makeup and that kind of stuff like that. Ravu mayim, okay, mayim hamarim, ravu mayim hamarim. They had to increase the amount of exams for sota. Elef shepaska, okay, elef shepasku, but rather when they stopped, misharavu mikablei matan, okay, but they had to stop. Then there were so many, again, they had to stop the sota ritual. Misharavu mikablei matanot. Once there increased the number of, again, judges or leaders that accepted the gifts, right? Nitma'atu hayamim. Then the days were shortened. V'nikutsaru hashanim. And the years were shortened. In other words, what happened was that the days of their lives, the length of days became short. Tichtiv, why? V'sonem matanot yichya. Because we have a pasuk that says, one who hates receiving gifts, they will have long life. Misharabu zichuche halev, those that were haughty, okay? And this regards to Torah students. Ravu machloket b'Yisrael. There increased the amount of disagreement, okay, among the Jewish people. Misharavu Talmudei Shammai v'Hillel. Once there was a increase in the students of Shammai and Hillel, shelo shimshu kol tzorchan, that they did not, so to speak, work together to satisfy needs. Again, it reminded me of what's going on between Democrats and Republicans in Congress, unfortunately. Okay, what happened? Ravu machloket b'Yisrael. There increased, again, argumentation in Israel. V'neaseh Torah kishtei Torot. And it resulted as if the Torah was like two different Torahs. Misharavu mikablei tzedakah min ha'ovdei kochavim. Once there increased the number of individuals who accepted charity from Gentiles. Hayu Yisrael lamala, vehem lamata. Okay, Israel became above and they were below.
Originally.
Okay, what happened? Yisrael lifnim, vehem la'achor. Okay, Israel was ahead and they were behind. So what happens again? The reverse. Before, Israel was on top. The Gentiles were below. Israel was in front. The Gentiles were behind. But once they started accepting a lot of Gentile charity, the reverse was going to be the case. Okay. All right. Okay. Mishemet Yossi ben Yoez, etc. It said when these two important sages, they were among the earlier groups of the pairs, the Zugot. Okay. What happens? My eshkolot. What do we mean when we say the word clusters? Babes. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, so Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Ish Shehakol Bo. It's the person that has everything in it, all the right midos as well as the right learning. Okay, those were sages that excelled in both. Okay, Yochanan Kohen Gadol he'avir hodiyat hamaaser v'chulei. That Yochanan Kohen Gadol did away with the maaser, the tithe declaration. Ma'itama, what was the reasoning? Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina, he says as follows: Lafisha einot nino to katikuno, because they were not giving the maaser and masrot in the proper method. The Rachmana Amar the Yehive leLeviim, that according to the Torah, it's supposed to go Trumat Maaser, it's supposed to go to the Leviim. But what happens as we go to Memchet on the top, and we'll keep rolling as long as we can. Va'anan kayehivan the Kohanim, and we give to the Kohanim. Okay, so what happens, says the Gemara? Velude, so confess ashar ma'asrot. So let them say the confession on the other maser, maser risheni, maser ani, etc. Okay, Amar Reish Lakish, says Reish Lakish, kol bayit she'ein. Okay, mitvada al maaser rishon, any household that does not make its confession on maaser rishon, shuv ein mitvada al shar maasrot, does not make confession on any of the other tithings. Okay, Ma'itama, what's the reasoning? Amar Abaye, says Abaye, Ho'ilu patach bo hakatuv tchila, since that is what is mentioned first in scripture, Miklal, the afrushe hava mafarshe. Okay, but doesn't that still mean that they were still separating the tithes? Okay, Vahatanya, but aren't we taught in a Braita, Afhu bitel at Havidui, that he did away also with the testimony, the Gazar al Hadamai, and he made the decree in regarding the issue of Demai. Lafi sheshalach bechol gvul Yisrael. Why? Because he sent out throughout the entire land, the borders of Israel. Vira'ah she'ein mafrishin, and he saw that people were not separating their tithes, I'm going to say appropriately, ela truma gedola bilvad, except for the truma gedola, that first tithe to the Kohani, right? Umaaser rishon, umaaser sheni, and maaser rishon and maaser sheni. Miktsatan maasrin, umiktsatan ein masrin. And in regards to maaser rishon or maaser sheni, some people did the tithing, they did their tithe, and some did not do. Amar lehem, and he said to them, B'ni, my children, bo'u v'omer lechem, I'll say to you the following: Kashem shetruma gedola, yesh ba'avon mita. The same way, inappropriate tithing of truma gedola is going to result in death. Kach trumat maaser v'tevel, yesh bahen avon mita.
Non-Kahanim eating truma gedola, you're chayav misa.
Okay. So likewise, with regards to truma maaser and tevel, which is totally untithed, item, yesh bahen avon mita, there's also a death penalty involved there too. Okay, so what happens? What did he do? Amad vehikim lahem. He therefore came forward and made the following decree: Halokeach perot me'am haaretz, one who purchases produce from an am haaretz, mafrish bahen maaser rishon u'maaser sheni, is expected to separate the tithe of Maaser Rishon and Maaser Sheni. Maaser Rishon, first tithe, mafrish mimena trumat maaser. Okay, he must separate from it the trumat maaser. That's right. V'notna lekohen, and give that to the kohen. Umaaser sheni, and the second time, olev ochlo b'Yerushalayim. He brings it up and eats it in Jerusalem. So the Gemara continues, maaser rishon umaaser ani, regarding first tithe and tithe for the poor. Hamotzi mechavero alav haraya. Okay, we would say there, if the person didn't do it, you're challenging, you have to make your proof,
Because it's
right? Because then,
it's the mind.
right? Tarte tikain. No, he made basically two takanot. Bitel vidui the chaverim. He nullified the confession of those chaverim, those individuals among the rabbinic class, okay, that were stringent in their tithing, right? V'gazar al hadamai shel amei haaretz, and he also made a gezerah, a decree in regarding the untithed produce of Amha. Okay, right? Va'afhu bitel et ha-me'orerim, and he also invalidated the awakeners, or those who wake. Okay, what do we mean by that? Asks the Gemara. Mai ma'orerim. Okay, Amar Rachva. He says as follows: Bechol yom v'yom shahayu omdim leviim al duchem. Every day when the Leviim would stand on the platform, v'omrim, and they would say the following pasuk. Okay, from Tehillim, Ura lama tishan Hashem. Wake up, why is Hashem sleeping? Amar lehem, and he responded to them by telling them, V'chi yesh sheina lifnei hamakom. Do we really say that God is capable of sleeping? V'halo kvar ne'amar, but it's already also said in Tehillim, Hinei lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael, that the master of the guardian of Israel never slumbers nor sleeps. Ela bizman she Yisrael shuyin b'tzar v'ovdei kochavim b'nachat b'shalva. But at the time when Israel is deep in despair, okay, and the Gentiles have got it pleasure and peace, lechach ne'amar, then that's the time that should be saying the pasuk, Ura lama tishan Hashem. That's when it's appropriate to say that pasuk. Ve'et hanokfim, the knockers, my nokfim, what do we mean here by knockers? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel as follows. Shahayu misartin, that they would cut la'egel bein karnav. They would take an animal and slit it over here between the horns so that blood would flow. It would blind the animal so that they would think, therefore, it's easier to shech the animal at that point. Kadesh yipol dam be'enav, so blood would flow into its eyes. Ata ihu batel, and he came and he was the one who nullified it. Why? Mishum de mechaze ki muma, because one could assume that there's the possibility of a mum. Once you cut the animal, okay, in the head, okay, that could be a mum. Now, furthermore, says the Mishnah, okay, right, kimatnita tana, and this is similar to a Mishnah that taught as follows: shahayu choftin oto b'maklot, that they would take an instrument and smash the head of the animals with a staff or some other instrument, kederech she'osino to lifnei avodat kochavim, in a similar manner that the Gentiles would smash the head of the animal. Okay, all right, yeah. So what happens? Amar lahem. Okay, and remember the concern is by smiting the animal there, you could cause a damage to the brain, all right, and that would also be problematic. Ad mataya tim ma'achilim nevelot lemizbeach. At what point do you result in nevelot being eaten from animals that were offered on the altar. Nevelot, asks the Gemara. Excuse me. Ha shachit laho ela trefot. But the animals are already slaughtered. So therefore you can't call them nevelot, but you can call them trefot. Okay? Why? Shema nikav krum shel moach. Because perhaps it's possible that they would pierce the membrane of the brain. Okay? What did he do? Amad v'hitkin lahem. Sorry. Tabaot b'karka.
Put the rings in.
He therefore put rings in the area where they would slaughter. I just need to grab a cup of water and then I will continue. You like water from the water cooler, Rabbi? No, this is fine. Okay, let's keep going. All right, yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, just pick up. Okay, that's where we got. All right, so therefore they put the rings. Okay, Ad Yamav Haya Patish Makeh Yerushalayim. Until his time, there was a hammer going on in Jerusalem. What was the hammering? B'cholo shel moed. It was a certain the blacksmiths were allowed to work during Chol Moed, okay, because of the fact of concern of loss of parnasim, okay, but the sound was throughout all Yerushalayim, and that was negative, and people got the impression all of you could work on Chol Moed, okay. So what did he do? Okay, he made a decree. Okay, Kol Yamav lo haya adam tzarich lish'ol al hadamai. Okay, and again, throughout his life, no one had to ask about the question of Demai. Kida Amran, as we have said. We now get to a new Mishnah. Okay, we'll keep rolling. Matnitin, Misha Batla Sanhedrin. Once the Sanhedrin then was no longer continuing. But what happened was we're still continuing the idea of at certain points of time, okay, life, the situation of life deteriorated. So once the Sanhedrin no longer was viable and continued, Batel Hashir Mibeit Hamishtaot. They nullified music, I'm going to say it that way, at festive meals, particularly weddings, right? Shenamar, as it says, Bashir lo yishtu yayin v'gomer. Okay, associating music and drinking. Mishametu nivi'im harishonim. Whence the earlier prophets died, bitlu urim v'tumim. Okay, then they nullified the use of the urim v'tumim. Mishicharav beit hamikdash. Once the temple was destroyed, batel hashamir. They no longer utilized the value of the shamir. V'nofet sufim. Okay, and we're going to get to that later. Okay, upasku anshe amunah miYisrael, and people of true faith. Okay, stopped in Israel. In other words, those who were pious, righteous individuals. Shenamar, as it says, Hoshia Hashem ki gamar chasid v'gomer. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer says, Ha'id Rabbi Yoshua gave a testimony, Miyom shecharav Beit HaMikdash, from the time the temple was destroyed. What? Ein yom she'ein bo klala. There was no day that there was not curse, misfortune. V'lo yarad hatal lebracha, and the dew did not fall for blessing. V'nital tam haperot, and the fruit of Eretz Yisrael lost its tam, its taste. Rabbi Yossi Omer, he added, Rabbi Yossi, Afnital Shoman Haperot, even the richness of the fruit was lost. Okay, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, he says as follows: Hatahara nitla. Okay, when the observance of tahara on the part of nida, okay, was stopped at the time, at the reach. Okay, then the odor of the fruit. Okay, both were lost. Hama asrot nidlu, and then the tithing was forgotten. At shomen hadagan, okay, and the value of the grain. Okay, the chachamim omrim, but the sages say hazunut v'hakshafim kilu et hakol. According to the sages, it was promiscuity and magic that destroyed everything. Okay, Gemara umimai demi shabat la sanhadre. So why did it say initially starting off that it was when the Sanhedrin was no longer in the force? Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, bereid the Rav Yoshua, son of Rav Yoshua, da Amar Kra, basing on a pasuk, Zikenim Mishar Shavtu, Bachurim Meneginatav. Okay, citing that pasuk. Amar Rav Idna, Desham'a Zimra Ta'aker, says Rav, the ear that hears music should be pulled off, uprooted. Amar Rava, says Rava, Zimra baveta, churva b'seifa. Singing in a home, destruction will ultimately come to be. Okay? Shneamar, as it says, kol yeshura, right? Kol yeshorer b'chalon cherev. Okay? Cherev kesev ki arza ara. Right? Ma'i ki arza ara. What do we mean by that part of the pasuk? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, bayit hamesubach arazim irhu. We're talking about a house that is close to these tall trees, these cedar trees. Okay, that therefore the trees surround the house. Shouldn't it be protected? Excuse me. Ela afilu bayit hamesubach ba'arazim mitro'aya. But rather, even a house that is surrounded by high cedar trees that ordinarily would protect it would be destroyed. Okay. Amar Rav Ashi says as follows: Shmami, now we learn from this, ki madchil churva b'sefer madchil. That when destruction occurs, what do we have? Okay, that it starts, okay, at the threshold, right, at the doorway, so to speak. Okay, Shneamar charav b'saf, v'ibayat ema, and others would say mehacha, from a different pasuk, right? V'shi'eha yochich sha'a, starts at the gate. Amar mar ba Rav Ashi, the Didi, to me it was told, Chazi le, I saw this specifically, okay, Minagach ki Torah. In other words, he's Mar Bar Rav Ashi says, I had a situation where I believed I saw a demon, and the demon was actually goring at the doorway, okay, and that was what, in other words, that kind of music, all these kinds of things would destroy the house. Okay. Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Zimra dinagde uvidav kare, the music of the boat people and of the plowers, share, that's permitted, right? The gardai, but the music of the weavers, asur, that's prohibited. Rav Huna batel zimra. Rav Huna did totally away, a total edict, no music whatsoever. What happened? Kam ma'eh avaze bezuza. Okay, there was an increase in the price of geese.
No, a decrease.
I'm sorry, kam me'ah zuza. The market established that there were 100 geese that could be purchased at one zuz. Ume'ah se'ah chite bezuza. And also 100 seah of wheat could be purchased at the low price of a single zuz. Velo ibaye, then nobody desired it. Ata Rav Chisda, along came Rav Chisda, Zilzel Bey, and Rav Chisda made fun of the decree of Rav. Okay, so what happened then? Ibaye ivaza bezuza. I would go searching for geese at the cost of a zuz, velo mishtakach, and it could not be found. Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, Gavre va'ane nashe pritsuta. Okay, the Zimre Gavre, the song of men with women then answering, is pritsuta, is an example of promiscuity. Zimre Nashe, women singing first, Va'ane Gavre, and men answering them. Okay, Ke'esh is like fire, B'na'orat, in the fiber of flax. Okay, the reasoning being that men will have, if the men are supposed to answer, they are going to have to pay greater attention to the women and to what the women are singing. And we know that that's not appropriate. Okay, Lamai nafkamina, what's the difference in the two of them? Levetule ha mikame, levetule ha mikame ha, in order to invalidate this before this. Okay, that there shouldn't be women first and men second in those singing choir, etc. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Kol hashoteh ba'arba mine zamer, whoever is drinking, okay, and at the same time with four kinds of melodies.
4 kinds of
Okay.
instruments.
I have melodies. Mevi chamesh poraniot leolam. Okay, all right. So what happens?
Brings
Okay, right. All right. I just need to make a note real quick. Okay. All right. What they bring destruction to the world. Shneimar, as it says, Oy mashkimei baboker, schar yidofu me'acharei v'neshef yayin yadlikem v'haya kinud v'naval.
Kinor.
Yeah, v'haya kinur v'naval tof v'chalil v'yayin mishtehen v'et polei Hashem lo yabitu. Okay, so they mentioned 4 kinds of instruments there. Okay, ma katuv acharav, what's written about after it? Lachein gila ami mibli da'at. Okay, that they had no knowledge. Shegormim galut leolam, that is, this is going to cause exile. Uchvodo matai ra'av, and the lack of honor. When will it be removed? Shemavi'in ra'av leolam, because this is going to result in famine in the world. Vahamuno sachat sama shagomim laTorah shetishtakach milomdeha. Okay, and what happens is that there is right sahat sama. Okay, this kind of degradation that's going to cause the lack, the no longer Torah learning, and Torah will be forgotten among the students. Based again on a pasuk, Vayisach Adam Vayishpel Ish, Shegorim Shfeilut L'son Eish Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because it causes the theoretically the downfall of those who hate Israel. Hashem. In other words, it's going to cause the downfall really of the Jewish people, right? Ve'ein ish el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All right, and what we're talking about there is the downfall of Hashem, because people are not paying attention. Why ish? Because it says Shneimar Hashem ish milchama. All right. Ve'enei gvohim tishafelna, and the eyes of the haughty will go down. Shegormim shfalut shel Yisrael, and that will cause again the downfall of Israel. Uma kativ acharav, and what's written after that? Okay, Yechiva Shaol Nafsha v'Na'afa Pia B'Lebli Chok v'Yered Hadra v'Hamona v'Sheina Ya'alu Va. Okay, again, Shaol enlarged the desire, etc., glory, multitude, ceremony, rejoice, and they descend into it. Vishametu Nevi'im Rishonim. We'll go on a bit more. Once the earlier prophets die, Ma Nevi'im Rishonim. Who do we say are the earlier prophets? Amar Rav Huna says Rav Huna Zed David Ushmuel. That's David and Shmuel. Ushlomo and Shlomo. Rav Nachman Amar. B'yamei David Zimnin Salik v'Zimnin Lo Salik. In the time of David, there were times that went and the times they did not. Okay, Shaharei Sha'al Sadok Va'alta. Okay, right? Lo, right? That did not. We have an example later that Sadok raised the following issue: Sha'al Evyatar V'lo Alta. Okay, that time of David. Okay, Sadok was able to question the Urim and Tumim and received an answer. But later in generations, when Evyatar tried to do the same thing, he did not get an answer from the Urim Tumim. Okay, Shnei as it says, Vaya'al Evyatar, that he went up Evyatar. That is without an answer from the Urim Tumim. Meitiv Rava Bar Shmuel. He challenged the following, Rava Bar Shmuel. Vayhi Lidrosh Elohim Kol Yemei Zechariah. But we have an example with Uriah, okay, later on, where there was examples where they sought an answer, okay, thinking, implying that they were able to use generations later the Urim Tumim. Okay, so what happened? So right, Kol Yemei Zechariah, Hemevin B'Ra'ot Elohim, right? My love B'Urim Tumim. Aren't we saying then that they must have used the Urim Tumim to get answers? Lo, no, says the Gemara. B'Nevi'im. No, they consulted the prophets. Tashma, listen to the following Braita. Mishecharav Beit Hamikdash Rishon. When the first temple was destroyed, Bitlu Arei Migrash Upasku Urim V'Tumim. Okay, they did away the area, the Arei Migrash, cities that had empty land around it, okay? And what happened? And they stopped use of the Urim V'Tumim. Upasak Melech mi Beit David. And there was an end to the heirs of King David in the monarchy, the dynasty. V'im lachshoch Adam lomar. And were a person to whisper and say, Vayomer hit rashta, says hit rashta to them, Asher lo yachlu mikdash hakodashim ad amod kohen la'urim b'tumim. Okay, where Hidrachashta said you cannot eat kodshim. Okay, from right until the kohen is able to establish things through the urim b'tumim. Amar lo, he said to them, ka'adam she'omer lechaveiro. It's like a person who says to his neighbor, ad sheyichyu meitim. V'yavo Mashiach ben David, okay, that you can't do something until the Mashiach comes, right? Ela Amar Rav Nachman, Rav Bar Yitzchak, he said as follows, Ma Nevi'im Harishonim, who do we claim were the earlier prophets? La'afuke, to exclude Mechagai, Zechariah, Umalachi.
Everybody.
That accept them. The Achronim Minhu, that they were later prophets. Okay, the Tanu Rabbanan, as we learn elsewhere in a Mishnah, in a Braita, Mishemetu Chage Zechariah Malachi. Once the three of them died, Nistalka Ruach HaKodesh b'Yisrael. Then the divine spirit left Israel. V'afal pichein, and nevertheless, Chayin Hayum Mishtamshin Bevatko. Nevertheless, they would utilize the divine voice or a divine spirit, if you will, that would come. Why? Because we have the following example. Shapam echad, one time, Hayu Mesubin Ba'aliyat Beit Georia Biricho, that the rabbis were relaxing and reclining in the attic of the house of Goria in Jericho. Natna lehem bat kol. Suddenly a bat kol, a divine voice, came forward, min hashamayim, va'amra, and said from heaven, following, Yesh bachem adam echad shera'ui shetishresh china alav, that there is a man among you that the divine spirit is worthy of alighting on him. In other words, to become like a prophet, right? Ela she'ein doro ra'ui lecha. But the generation is not worthy of it. Not nu einehem behillel zaken. Their eyes looked at Hillel zaken. Ukshemet, when he died, isbiduhu. They mourned him by saying, "A chassid, what a righteous person. A anav, what a humble person. Talmido shel Ezra. He was indeed like a student of Ezra. V'shuv pamacher." And then in another situation, Hayu Mesubin Ba'aliyah B'Yavne, they were sitting around in an attic in Yavne. Natna lehen bat kol min hashamayim, came forward a divine voice from heaven. Va'amra lehen, and it said to them, Yesh b'chem adam echad shera'oi l'tishra shechina alav. Again, there's a person among you that the divine spirit is worthy of alighting on him. Ela she'ein doro zakayim lecha. But the generation is not worthy of it. That nu einehem b'Shmuel hakatan. Their eyes looked to Shmuel hakatan. What? Ukashamet, and when he died, hisbiduhu oy hey anav. How humble he was. Hey chassid, how righteous he was. Talmido shel Hillel. He was indeed a student of Hillel. V'avhu amar b'sha'at mitato. And even he said, just prior to his death, the following: Shimon v'Yishmael lecharava. Shimon and Ishmael, okay, will go to the sword. In other words, there will be a warfare, right? And what furthermore? V'chavruhe lekatla, and my colleagues to death. B'shar amma lebiza, and the rest of the nation will be to biza, to despair, so to speak, to ruin. Right? Va'akan sagi'in atidin, and terrible tragedies will befall the people in the future. The mitei al amah will fall on the nation. Va'af al Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, okay, and even regarding Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, bikshu lamar hey chassid hey anav, they wanted to say in his eulogy how righteous and how humble. Ella shenitra pasha'a, but the time was past. In other words, it was too late to do so. Why? She'ein maspidin al harugei malchut, that they did not say such a eulogy for those that were put to death by the government. Okay, we'll keep rolling. All right. Yeah. Mishacharav Beit HaMikdash, once the temple was destroyed, Batel Hashamir, that the Shamir worm was no longer utilized or in existence. Tanu Rabbanan, says a Braita, Shamir Shabo Bana Shlomo et Beit HaMikdash. We're talking about the animal, the worm, that by which Shlomo built the Beit HaMikdash. Shneamar va'abayit behi banoto Evan Shlema, that the house itself was of solid stone, Masa Nivneh, a burden to be built. Hadvarim kichtavam, said one. The words are like what they said. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda. Amarla Rabbi Nechemia ben Nechemia, v'chi afshar lomarchein, is it possible to really say that? V'alo kvar ne'amar, but it's already said. Kol elu avanim yikarot v'gomer, that these were all precious stones. Megurarot migra, that they were chiseled out with a chisel. Imkain ma Talmud lomar. If that's the case, what are you trying to teach us? Lo nishma b'beit b'chavanoto, that it was not heard inside the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Shahaya metaken mi bachutz umachnis mi bifnim, that they did the chiseling outside and then they brought the stones inside. Amar Rabbi, says Rabbi, near in divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that the words of Rabbi Yehuda seem appropriate, bavnei mikdash, regarding the stones of the Beit HaMikdash. V'divrei Rabbi Nehemiah, but the words of Rabbi Nehemiah, be'avnei beito, in the house of Solomon. Rabbi Nehemiah shamer lamai ata. So Rabbi Nehemiah, he says, what the worm, what was its, why did it come? What was its purpose? It was necessary as taught as follows. Avanim halalu ein kodvin otan bidyo. These stones did not have an impression written on them in ink. Mishum shnei amar. Why? Because it says petuchei chotam ve'ein mesartin aleihem be'izemo mishum shnei amar b'melo otam. Okay, it says that they have to be, in a sense, whole, and you cannot cut them, okay, using any kind of an instrument. All right? Ela kotev aleihem b'dio, but rather they would make a mark with ink, umar elehen shamir mibachutz, and they would show the worm, the mark from the outside, vehein nifkaot me aleihen kete'ena, and they would cut through it. Okay, the worm would cut through the stone like it was a fig or a date. Zo sheniv, right? Okay, zo shenivkaat b'yamot hachama ve'enach hasera klum. Right, so this was done in the summertime, and therefore they were not lacking any. Uva kib'ak'ah zo shenivkaat b'yamot geshamim, and being cut during the winter months, the rainy months, ve'enach hasera klum, and it wasn't missing anything. Tanu Rabbanan, another bright. Shamir zeh briato kisora. The shamir was the size of a barley corn. Misheshit yemei breshit nivra, and it was created among the first days of creation. Ve'ein kol davar kasher yechol la'amod b'fanav, and something hard was never able to withstand it. Kama mishamrinoto. How did they then protect, if you couldn't grasp, you couldn't hold it in place, how did they guard the shamir? Korchinoto b'sefugin shel tzemer. They would wrap it in tufts of wool, umanichinoto b'tanei shel aver, and they would put that then into a, I guess I would call it like a tube of lead, mle'as sovei sa'orim, and that tube of lead was then filled with barley, right? Amar Rav Ami, says Rav Ami, Mishecharav Mikdash Rishon, once the first temple was destroyed, Batla Shira Parnada Zuchuchit Levana. They did away with paranda silk and with white glass. Okay? Tanya Namihachi, and the Braita supports this view. Mishecharav Mikdash Rishon, once the first temple was destroyed, Bitla Shira Parndata, they did away with paranda silk, uzuchuchit levana, and white glass. V'rechav barzel, and chariots made out of metal. Okay, barzel there being iron. V'yesh omrim, and there are others who say af yayin karush haba mishanir, and others say it was gelled wine that came from Shanir. Hadomer ke'igulei dvela, that was very similar to pressed fig cakes, right? But now we get going. V'nofet sufim. What do we mean by that term? My nofet sufim. How do we understand that term? Okay. Amar Rav, says Rav, solet. It is grain or fine flour. Shetzafa al gabe nafa, that floats on top of the sieve. V'domeh le'esa shenilusha b'devash v'shemen. And it's similar to dough that has been kneaded using honey and oil. Okay, the Levi Amar, says Levi, shteki karot hanid bakot b'tanor. He claims no, it's like two loaves that are stuck inside the oven, right? And what happens when they're stuck inside the oven at the same time? V'tovchot ubaot ad shemegiot zo lezo. they grow and they expand until they actually come in contact one to the other. The Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi Amar, what did he say? Zed devash haba min hatzipiyah. That it refers to honey that comes from some certain kinds of location. My mashma kidmitargem, as was translated by Rav Sheshet, kama dinatun de briata. It's certain kinds of beeswax, right? As come from the fact that the bees are created, okay, and they fly, vishitin barome alma, and they fly around the heights of the world, right? Umatyan duvsha me'isavei Torah, and they bring honey from the top of the mountaintops. Okay, Tznan Hatam, as it's taught there, Kol hanitzutz tahor chutz midevash tzifin v'tzipichin. Okay, any kind of flowing item. Okay, right, from that comes from these locations. Mai zifin, what do we mean by flowing? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he says, Dvash shemizayfin bo. It's honey that's not able to be diluted. V'reish Lakish amar al shem mekomo. He says it's based on the place. Kedichtiv zif v'telem u'ba'alam. V'yotzei b'davar ato omer. And likewise, you could say something similar as follows. V'ba hazifin vayomru lish'ol. Okay? Okay, it's able to flow, and one could ask, hello, David, v'gomer. Isn't that like what David said? Ma zifin? What do we mean flowing? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he says, B'nei Adam hamizayfin dvaravrehem. It could be like men who let words flow from their tongue. In other words, they're lying. All right, they're not telling the truth. The Rabbi Eliezer says, Omer, al shem mekomam. He says again, it dealt with their place. Kedichtiv, as it's written, zif v'telem u'ba'alo. Okay, pasku anshe emunah, and we said that it's the men of truth of faith stopped. The Rabbi Yitzchak, elu b'nei Adam, shehein ma'minei b'kadosh baruch hu. These are the men who truly believed in the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Hagadol Omer, who says, Kol mi sheyesh lo pat b'ksalo, one who has bread in his basket, v'omer ma'ochel l'machar, and says, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Eino ela miktane emunah. They are really only of little faith. V'hainu da'amar Rabbi Eliezer, and this is what Rabbi Eliezer says, Mai dichtiv, ki mi bo b'yom ketanot, ki me boz, okay, who mocks, so to speak, the day of small, mi garam l'tzadikim sheyit baz beis shulchanam la'atid lavo, who is going to denigrate their table, so to speak, for the future. Ketanot shahaya bahen shelo ha'aminu b'kadosh baruch hu. And that's where we're going to stop. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So tomorrow morning, okay. All right.
We can do the daf, a normal daf.
We can do exactly.
We did really good. I'm really impressed. I didn't think this was going to happen.
Okay.
All right.
Is anyone going? I need to ride for tomorrow.
Okay.
Anyone?
I'm going to
I
be.
have Mel and Eileen.
I will drive. I'm driving Rebecca, and so I will pick you up.
Come back and get you.
I will pick you up. I will get them.
You're gonna do that? Go back and get him? Okay.
No, I'm going to pick him up.
Oh, okay. Because I have two, but if I want, if they.
But Karen is not coming.
Oh,
All right.
how come?
How come? Because she has other things that